Let's turn our attention to other stories now. In Nigeria, rice is a staple food eaten at least once a day in most homes. But sadly, the bulk of the rice we consume are imported from other countries, despite the fact that Nigeria has the capacity of being self-sufficient in rice production.
All right, even farmers who grow local here complain of poor patronage, as Nigerians would rather go for the imported product. Why?
Well, let's see this report and then we get along.
Changing people's mindsets concerning local rice is worrisome to the mill's owners because of low patronage of their products. But there seems to be positive the country is moving steadily towards self-sufficiency in rice production.
Less than 4 billion. That is an area government will still.
Over 11.6 million tons of milled rice from this farm is sold to rice millers across Nigeria.
The attention of the National Biosafety Management Agency has been drawn to a certain spurious online post being circulated in the social media that a firm and the federal government of Nigeria have flooded the Nigerian market with genetically modified rice purported to be poisonous. This falsehood definitely is the product of the writer's imagination, who probably is using a pseudo name. No genetically modified rice has either been imported or released officially into the country. And as a matter of fact, there is no genetically modified organism anywhere in this country commercially. It will suffice to note that there is no genetically modified rice that has been commercially released anywhere in the world. All the genetically modified rice, particularly the golden rice, is still on the confined feed trial.
All right, we have with us now someone who is a rice farmer. Let me describe him basically as that, someone who has been into the farming of rice. Rotimi Williams, it's good to have you join us right now.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you don't look like a farmer from the eyes of the average man.
I get that all the time.
All right, now fine, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
When it comes to farming in Nigeria, even from the secondary school days in primary school when they teach us agriculture, the issue of subsistence farming has always been there. Local implements and equipment, it has been there over the years, even up till now. But we require the issue of mechanized farming. They often talk about that, and you require lots of land to do that. How accessible is the issue of land for planting rice? Let me start from that.
Okay, well, regards land, speaking from my own experience, there hasn't been too much of an issue in terms of access to land.
Okay.
But the issue there is in terms of the land agreement, and then flood.
Okay.
That's the real mechanism. Because where I am at the moment, I have 45,000 hectares, of which as we speak now, is about 6 feet underwater. So those are the main issues we face today when it comes to land. The land is there. Land clearing is also an issue.
Okay, yeah.
With the cost.
Because I was going to take you back to what one of your chairmen said in the Ogun State chapter, asking the government to help with land clearing, provision of inputs, and encouragement with irrigation.
Okay.
Can we look at
some of these demands? I'll give you an example. I got a quote for land clearing and development of 500 hectares, and it came to a total of about 50 million. Now, think of 500 hectares, 45,000. And then think of your subsistence farmers who need to clear their land. Obviously, they're going to do it manually. And if it's not done properly, you're not going to get optimal yield. So land clearing costs, there needs to be something done about this. I don't know if it can be included in the policy in terms of government taking some of the cost off it. I don't know, but something has to be done definitely to encourage more people to get into agriculture.
All right, we see the policy and strategy document by the Ministry of Agriculture. Is a very long document. I have it here, about 59 pages of all of that. That if we have to narrow it down to the issue of rice, for someone like you who has been a major stakeholder in the issue of rice, how much of input do you have into, or how much of consultation was done with people like you in drafting the master plan by the Ministry, Federal Ministry of Agriculture?
Well, first of all, I would like to start by saying that I think the current master plan, this master plan, is a step it's a step forward from the previous one.
Yes.
So it's a continuation, which is good, right? And they addressed one particular issue, which was the major flaw of the previous master plan, which is data, the lack of data. The previous master plan was based on what I find to be unrealistic data that assumed that we'd gone from 5.3 million metric tons in 2012 to 10.7 million metric tons in 2014. If you understand rice, with a milling capacity of 60%, right? That suggests already that we're already self-sufficient.
Okay.
That was the issue. And that you now needed to focus on your milling capacity, right? So then you got a lot of encouragement for processors, for financing for processors. Now there are mills everywhere, there's no rice. So, that was the major flaw. They got those numbers wrong. And based on that, they built policy based on wrong data. Now, this master plan, one thing I pick from it is that they are addressing the issue of data. They don't want to make that same mistake. They've acknowledged in this report that they can't verify the data that was given to them previously, and they'll be working on that going forward, which for me is a major steps. I watch TV, I see a lot of people come on TV and give unrealistic
data.
I could be sitting here and tell you that, on my farm, we have yields of 15 tons per hectare, and the president is there watching. How then does anyone convince him that we don't?
Okay, but one thing the last administration had was some collaboration with the private sector and the government, in the case of the Olam farm in Nasarawa State. Was that a success story?
I think Olam have done very well, and they seem to be the only one that has transitioned from being millers to encouraging farmers and going into farming. I think they're about the only success story I'll pick from the long list of processors. They will be the only ones.
All right, when it comes to, if we're narrowing it down to the issue of rice in Nigeria, what's the difference between the kind of rice processed in Nigeria and the kind of rice that is imported? Because you often hear local farmers say, we are not patronized, we don't get patronage for the rice we produce and so on. So what's the difference between the local rice and the foreign rice or imported rice, so to say?
You want us to get into this?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
Okay. There's absolutely no difference.
Okay.
In my house today, we eat my rice, the rice I grow, right? Absolutely no difference, besides maybe the way it's processed. Now, when you compare the locally grown rice to imported rice, it's usually the cost. Now, we import most of our rice from Thailand. In Thailand, most of their inputs are subsidized. From the fertilizer to their input, the chemicals, the pre-emergence, post-emergence, everything is subsidized. In Nigeria here, you're on your own. I'm going to buy my fertilizer at full price. I'm going to buy my inputs, other inputs at full price. I'm going to buy my seeds full price. I can't compete. There's no way I'm going to compete with the imported rice. So your cost of production here will always be higher. Another issue is irrigation. Taking you back to the issue of irrigation. In Thailand, you go anywhere where there's a farm, you always see the stream. In Nigeria here, I have to pump my own water. The cost of fuel in the north is nothing like the one you get in Lagos. So that's another cost people don't actually take into consideration when it comes to farming.
Okay.
I was buying diesel at 229 per litre in December, January. So those are some of the issues that makes the cost of rice expensive, and your processors expect to buy the paddy from you at a lower price, but your cost of producing that paddy is actually quite high compared to other countries that we get our rice from.
Yeah, talking about irrigation, the federal government now says they will work with the River Basin Development Authority to have dams. Already, I think they have more than 22. Do you see that?
21, 22
20, yeah. Do you see that helping out?
I don't. I think there has to be a lot more work. When Cameroon was building the Lago Dam, Nigeria was advised to build a dam as well. We never did. It's that dam that comes all the way from Cameroon, Adamawa, down to River Benue that affects all of the farms on the coast. Now, rice needs water, so you always find rice farms where there's a river. We always flood, which limits us to one crop a year. So now wet season, I'm not planting because I planted last year. I lost everything. This year I'm not doing anything, it's flooded again. So we'll have to wait till the dry season. So how then are we going to
attend? It's not ironic, really, because you need water and here is flood.
Yes, exactly. So exactly. So it's the gift and the cost. Too much water.
Too much of it.
Too much of it.
Yeah, even too much of everything is bad, like they say. All right, it's time. Let me take everyone to my wall now, as I do usually, to understand the perspectives to this rice thing we are talking about today. Now, now rice is one of the most consumed foods in Nigeria. I'm going to ask Rotimi Williams, why is rice, out of so many things, soybeans, beans, and all of that, why rice? Rice is very common. I'm going to ask you that later on. But Nigeria ranks among the top 5 rice-consuming countries of the world. Much of this consumed capacity is largely catered for through importation from other rice-producing countries, making Nigeria one of the largest rice importers of food commodity. Now, this despite the fact that Nigeria has the potential to be self-sufficient in rice production, both for local consumption and for export purposes. Now, let's move on. Let's move on and have an understanding. With an annual consumption of between 6 to 6.4 million metric tons, Nigeria's domestic supply of rice is estimated at 3 million metric tons. Now, according to the Minister of Agriculture, Chief Audu Ogbe, Nigeria is currently importing about 2 billion naira worth of rice daily, and the funds to sustain such importation are no longer obtainable. Certainly, you know the issue of recession and all the comments from the Ministry of Finance, the presidency, and all of that about Nigeria being broke and so on. Let's move on. Now, Nigeria is the world's number 2 largest importer of rice after China. Now, China is the largest importer of rice in the world. Nigeria is second largest importer of rice in the world. Now, the Philippines places number 3, and Iran places number 4, and Indonesia rounds it up at the 5th position. So these are the top 5 rice importers, and you see the position of Nigeria number 2. So it tells you something. Now, let's move on now. There are a lot of questions to ask Rotimi here anyway, but Nigeria rice merchants imported 24 million metric tons of rice valued at 1.77 trillion naira from Thailand, Pakistan, India, and Vietnam in the last 10 years. And the bulk of Nigerian rice imports came from Thailand and India. Rotimi mentioned that earlier. Now, however, India's removal of an import ban on non-basmati rice has led to the country becoming Nigeria's leading supplier. Can you give us an understanding of that? Because when it comes to the issue of restriction or ban, as the case may be, sometimes it hurts a business from between countries, and sometimes even diplomatic. Now, how has that helped India, or to our detriment, or helped us to the detriment of India, depending on however way you see it?
With regards to importation, I mean, from India or be it from any other country, help them, yes, but it keeps hurting us. Now, I'm going to take this issue back and just allow people to understand. You brought up a figure on the imported rice in the last 10 years, but they never take account of the smuggled rice in the last 10 years. So our consumption is not actually 6.3. The recorded consumption is 6.3. The actual consumption is unknown, right? So how much we actually spent on rice, we can't determine. This is that 1 trillion plus X. Do you understand? So these are the issues that need to be addressed. What India does, what Thailand does, doesn't matter. What we are doing with rice production, how much we're spending, and how much needs to be channeled into production here is what we really should be focusing on. Okay,
let's look at the issue of the GMO rice. That's the report we watched earlier, talking about importation. It said there's nothing like GMO rice. These countries, do they produce any of this GMO rice?
Thailand, for a fact, I know they don't. I'm not 100% sure about India, but I know for a fact that Thailand don't produce GMO rice. So I have no idea where that GMO thing came from. I have no idea. And I have no idea. I'd rather not see it. I'll sit on the fence on this one.
But how healthy is GMO rice if it exists in that context?
Yes.
You see, here's the thing, right? The previous administration, which was led by Akinwumi Adesina, standardized seeds, right, to Faro 44, 52, Faro 60. Yeah. There was no GMO there, right? It was just buy your seeds and you grow. So where the issue of GMO comes in between, I'm lost. I have no idea what's going on.
But I'm aware. I think I remember there when Akinwumi was still there. There was the issue of the GMO on some products were tinkered with on GMO. Yes,
I think it was chicken. I think it was chicken, and one or two other things. And you know, here's the thing about GMO. I'm not sure GMO is necessarily a bad thing, but if you cannot control it, if you cannot monitor and control, then don't introduce it. And that's the issue here in Nigeria. We can't do those things yet. We don't have we don't have things in place to check them.
Okay.
So we're not going. I don't think it should be welcomed. And now we're still trying to encourage the small farmers. Do you understand? So I just think it's the wrong time to introduce this product.
All right. Now, the issue of the plan here between 2016 and 2020, a projection of how realistic by 2020 we should be self-sufficient, we should be this, we should be that, a lot of dream as the case may be. You mentioned the issue of subsidy earlier on in India or Thailand, for instance. What is the plan for subsidy when it comes to policy in all of this between now and 2020?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't see us being self-sufficient in 2020. I'm tired of people using that. I think that word is grossly is misused. We're not going to be self-sufficient by that point.
Okay.
And the truth about it is, all the tonnage, they say we produce, what, 3 million tons per annum? From where? What farmers? I was watching, I was at an event where the president was, and a government official went up to speak about rice and says in a certain state, they produce, what, 7 tons per hectare. It doesn't happen. On my farm, I put all the necessary inputs. We take all the care in the world. We still only do 4.5, at best 5 tons per hectare. Thailand, where we import from, does 5 tons per hectare. If we're doing 7 tons per hectare, then why are we importing? So these are the issues. So look, until we come out and say as it is, we're not going to address these issues. We keep window dressing, all these things. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
Who's going to pay for the land? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for the land clearing cost? Who's going to do the irrigation? Fertilizer price is going up. Input costs are going up because of the dollar. The farmer's ability to earn in naira is still the same. How are they going to afford this? You know, so there are a lot of things we need to look at before we make such projections. That's my only issue. 2020 is very unrealistic. It's not going to happen.
So does that mean that the master plan or the plan for rice, the projections, is unrealizable?
The projection is just a target. You don't have to hit your target. You can be as close to that target as possible. But you think that by 2020, no rice will come into Nigeria
again?
But
Nigerians will hold government accountable to that. If you say by 2020 you stop importing rice, and by that 2020 comes, and you know what it is.
I completely understand that, and it's just unfortunate. I think people just need to say it as it is. Let people understand the position where we're in. Rice is going to be expensive. We're going to carry on importing.
It's expensive already.
It's already expensive, but I don't think this is the end. Because a lot of the rice we're still consuming is from previous imports.
So the ones we get now, sorry, the imports we get now through the legal channel, right? Because it's been banned. So if we keep importing, what exactly are you saying?
Do you need me to answer?
Yes, I need you to answer that.
Okay. So if you go to Ido market, you always see them offloading rice that you do not know the name. And no government official is going to ask why. A lot of rice is still being imported through Cotonou borders. Now Cotonou says you can bring it to land border, they take it through Niger, comes down through Kano, which you'll find that rice price in Kano, imported rice, is usually cheaper than Lagos. It doesn't make any sense.
Whoa.
You see, every time we raise our own duty here, Cotonou drops their own. Cameroon does the same. We need to start looking at these things. Because for every time they do that, I have to justify the cost of my own rice. You see, so it's imported rice, the low cost, the smuggled rice, versus the high cost of production for me. I'm always going to lose on that end.
Okay, we are discussing the rice master plan for Nigeria. Right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we are looking at the Rice Master Plan on this segment. We have Rotimi Williams with us in the studio. We've been talking about this all the while and looking at the differences between what Nigeria is not doing right and why are we importing rice so much from a certain number of countries. What are they doing differently in Nigeria? Is not
2019 be a reality?
Exactly. Now, Rotimi, let me ask you this question. I have here countries, Thailand, India, and Pakistan that we import rice from. We have known that Nigeria has potential in the area of people, we have potential in the area of land mass, we have potential in the area of conducive weather when it comes to rice production. But what are these countries doing differently? Apart, you mentioned subsidy earlier on anyway, but what are they doing that Nigeria is not doing?
I always use Thailand as an example because I've been there quite a few times and I've tried to study how they operate. I just think that the government has managed to channel the minds of people into actual farming and has been able to take the entire value chain and address it one step at a time. So from seed production to production, which is farming, to processing, to storage, and then to distribution. Everywhere has been properly addressed. In Nigeria here, we look at a value chain of about 6 segments, and you pick somewhere from the middle. The last administration wanted to do farming, but started encouraging processing. What about seed production and the farming? Do you understand? So those are some of the issues. We need to start from the foundation, which is seed production. I give you an example. Last year, right, for 1,000 hectares we bought seeds. The seeds were procured from Ibadan. I won't mention the name of the company. And after about 5 months, there was no rice. We put fertilizer, we put everything, we've incurred irrigation costs, got everything on it. They grew this tall, no grains on it. So bad seeds. So you have issues like this. I keep wondering, when exactly are we going to get it right from the bottom? If I'm having issues, I don't want to know what the subsistence farmers are going through. They don't have a voice. They're never going to have a chance to, to voice their own opinion or issues, but they must be having a tough time in this rice business.
Okay, let me take everyone now back to my wall. Now, I told you this, Thailand, India, and Pakistan are the countries where Nigeria imports most of her rice from. Let's move on now to understanding more perspective on this. Now, at the same time, Nigeria is by far West Africa's largest rice producer. So that is ironic, someone would say. But the northern, eastern, southern, and western parts of Nigeria all produce rice for local consumption and have the capacity to produce in quantum for export as well. You can see an average Nigerian rice farm in here. You see all of these. This is replicated in most parts of the country. But how it is not sufficient for consumption back home and we need importation is another thing altogether. Now, rice is grown in paddies or on upland fields, depending on the requirements of the particular variety. Now, the main areas of rice cultivation include the Middle Belt. We have all of this. The area of Benue, Plateau, Kogi, Nasarawa area is very good for rice, as well as the southern part of Nigeria. In Edo State is another very good. Ogun and Ebonyi State and Enugu State are also where local varieties of rice are produced. Also, we have, particularly in Nigeria, there are some rice we make references to. The Abakaliki rice is one. You can testify to that maybe. Yes. And then we also have the Ekboma rice and then the Ofada rice. Ofada rice is very common, I must say. All right, now let's move on to understanding this perspective. That is not to say there are not other places where rice are produced, but we have some of these states here where the cultivation of rice are very, very encouraging when it comes to weather, land, and everything that goes into producing rice. Let's move on now. In March this year, Lagos and Kebbi state governments signed a memorandum of understanding, which they said would culminate in the production of 70% of Nigeria's rice requirement annually. And the memorandum was signed between Governor of Lagos State and Governor of Kebbi State. Now, I know that you were not one of those who signed, but if, as a businessman, sitting and watching this memorandum of understanding, if everything moves into place the way it is planned to be, how beneficial would that be for the Lagos market and producers in Kebbi State, for instance?
Okay. So with regards to this issue in particular, I'm still not very convinced. I'm not convinced at all.
Okay.
And the simple reason is this. we don't have any clear understanding of the content of that MOU. Now, if you look at Kebbi State, north, Lagos is south. It says they've agreed, they've signed an MOU for production from Kebbi. It doesn't mention where it will be processed. Now, I'm assuming they're going to process it in Lagos, which means you have to truck paddy from Kebbi to Lagos. You're trucking essentially 40% of waste from Kebbi to Lagos. That is a huge cost to incur. You understand? If it's going to be processed in Kebbi, it's a different thing entirely. Now, if it's going to be processed in Kebbi, then I don't see why you're signing an MOU, because you could just allow them to process and then you buy from them.
When it comes to capital, because capital is required for all of this. You gave us a background earlier on. You said, well, clearing alone, land clearing is gulping about 40 to 50 million naira. And these are costs that any average businessman is going to eat deep into your finances. So governments going into, don't you see it's beneficial from that window?
It's encouraging from one state to another, but still, with regards Kebbi and Lagos, even from a business perspective, I still need to be, they need to convince me that this will work.
All right, let's stay with Kebbi. You know that the government earmarked 3.5 billion naira for rice production for this year, as we were speaking, and the fact money isn't coming the way it normally comes. So the MOU between Kebbi and Lagos might just be a mutually beneficial one, because this money has to be gotten somehow. All right, and Lagos State will always get the IGR for Lagos is higher than that of Kebbi. So even when money is not coming from the central port, Lagos can still finance projects. So you still don't agree?
I still don't agree. I still need to be convinced. Now, let me make this simple, right? You grow rice in Kebbi, right? You do not process in Kebbi. You truck your rice down to Lagos. Then you process. Only 60% of that is edible. 40% is waste. Why don't you process somewhere nearby and just go by? Why sign an MOU? That is what I need to be clarified.
Okay. Now let's go back to this. Now moving on. Nigeria plans to raise rice production to 300,000 metric tons per year. Now this will reduce its imports by 15% and cut costs by over 1 billion naira a year. Now, the federal government has concluded plans to end the importation of rice from 2017 and have placed a ban on importation of grain through land borders. That's official. But however, we know how these things, they talk about the issue of smuggling, and that's one being in here. Now, moving on. Now, but despite this ban, Nigeria Customs Service says there is alarming increase in the activities of rice smugglers. Most of Benin's rice imports, up to 30,000 truckloads per year, are routed via transit shipments through Niger Republic to the west of Nigeria. Rotimi Williams mentioned that earlier on. And if we move on, presently rice is one of the most expensive commodities in the market now, and most Nigerians can barely afford it. Now, according to a market survey, a bag of rice which used to sell for 16,000, 17,000 naira sells for between 22 to 23,500 right now. Okay, 10 retailers blame the rising price of rice on the ban of the importation of the commodity through the land borders, according to them. After some importers got their E-Form M approved last year, they allegedly began a massive stockpiling of the commodity, and as soon as the ban was announced, they took over the market with their brands of rice and started selling at cutthroat prices.
Okay, I expect the price that's
business in
really
there
during the festive period.
Now, just to know that E-Form M is a mandatory documentation process put in place by the federal government through the Federal Ministry of Finance and the CBN to monitor goods that are imported into the country, as well as enable collection of import duties where it is applicable. All right, now let's understand this. As far as the projection of the Ministry of Agriculture is concerned, about 100,000 to 120,000 tractors and likely equipment will be required between 5 to 8 years for Nigeria to be able to be self-sustaining in mechanized farming, especially when it comes to rice and some of these cereal. How feasible is that to import about 100,000 to 120,000 pieces of tractors and likely equipment?
for a change. I think that's actually very possible. I think in terms
Possible?
For a change?
Yeah, yes, I agree with you on this one.
Okay.
Yes, that is possible. I mean, funding as well is there. I mean, wherever country you're importing from, they have the export bank, the export promotion bank. They'll be looking for this sort of opportunities. And tractor is one of the major issues we have here. The cost of tractors keep going up with the dollar. So a lot of people are not able to afford this. Now, with better funding and a payment plan, able to take advantage of such.
Yeah, let's talk about funding and incentives perhaps for the subsistent farmers now. One of the initiatives by the Nigerian government now is what the CBN calls the Anchors Borrowing Scheme, which has 40 billion naira. Interestingly though, out of this 40 billion naira, about 222 billion is meant for small scale where the farmers now come in. So if you take a little calculation of what you have now divided by quite a number of farmers, maybe what will come to each farmer will be about 200,000, 150,000 to 200,000. Will that be a drop in a bucket?
For small farmers is classed at what? 2 hectares? A family with 2 hectares, 3 hectares, that's sufficient.
Okay.
Right? However, how the money gets to them is what I'm not clear about.
Okay. All right.
All right, Rotimi Williams, thank you very much for being part of our rice discussion this morning.
Rice discussion this morning.
And we wish you well.